Or good morning, wherever you're at right now. My name is Brian Knight. Today we'll be doing a session on killing paperwork and manual processes with things like Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. Those are the two ingredients we're going to use in our cookbook today. My email address is on your screen right now. You can also see it here. It's a little oh, there we go. My mug here. First question we always get asked that Crystal is probably receiving right now, the chat is this being recorded? It is being recorded for future posterity. You can find that recording on our website and also on YouTube as well. I'm a 14-year MVP from Pragmatic Works. I'm the founder of Pragmatic Works also. I've authored about 16 books, 17 now. I just finished Power Apps one, or Power BI one, excuse me. And I focus mainly right now on the Power Platform and SSIS, traditional SIS type items. So let's begin. So the goal of today's session is all around how do we eliminate that pile of paperwork that you have. For example, I have a sheriff's department I'm working with, and the concept of digital transformation, big buzzword there, and buzzword bingo, or in their case, just going digital meant going to PDFs in their case. So switching from paper forms to a PDF that they didn't then scan in and then print later. So we want to find a way of making that digital. On top of that, we want to increase the accountability there as well. So for example, if I hand you a requisition form and I ask you to sign this so I can go deliver it to somebody else, how do I know that it ever got done? So going digital is going to allow us to make sure that that workflow and the automation and accountability is all intact. Now we're going to do this with two ways. We're going to do this with Power Apps to build internal applications, and we're going to do this with Microsoft Flow for things like approvals and workflows and all those kind of things. And that's most of our session today is going to be focused on a demo that revolves around those two pieces of technology. So to begin with, just a real quick question about you guys. Let me go ahead and open up my poll real quick. Just want to find out how much Power App skills you presently have. You'll find a chat in your poll session right now. You'll actually see a session come out, a little pop-up question right now. And I'm getting the answers I expect to see. Most of you guys have never used it, are beginners. So this is, we're of course a data company, and a lot of people ask, why do we use Power Apps? Power Apps is such a cool technology, and it integrates with things like Power BI. So if you're looking at a dashboard inside of Power BI, you can have the app do things like write back to the database. So let me go ahead and let me get collected about 80% of you guys right now. We can close this real quick, and I'll share that with you. It looks like most of you guys have never used Power BI, which is what we find is a common thing, and about 24% are beginner. One more quick question, just while I have you guys in that mode. Let me go ahead and hide that one. And one more quick question. And is your company using Power Apps today? Maybe you have Power Apps, but not using it right now. I'm just kind of curious, is this a tool even in your toolbox right now? So you're going to find out later that most of you guys are probably licensed for it, and you don't even know. It's included in things like your Office 365 subscription, if you're Dynamics, you might find it there as well. So that's good enough. It looks like most of you are licensed and not using it. So let me go ahead and close this out and share the results there also. So about 52% of you guys are licensed but not using it yet, and some of you, about 23% of you guys, are actually using it and are licensed for it, and a quarter of you guys are not actually using it at all. So fair enough. So again, there's some neat stuff we can do in Power Apps, and Power Apps is mainly geared at internal applications to help you in your environment. It is a replacement for things like InfoPath, but it's InfoPath on major steroids. So we're going to be building something called a Canvas application. And a Canvas application is going to allow us to do WYSIWYG programming. What you see is what you get. Now, when we build something out, it works cross-platform. It's going to work across an iPhone, an Android device, a web browser, inside of Dynamics, inside of SharePoint. It is a beautiful thing. You build it once, and it's going to show up inside of your own internal company store in the Power Apps app, natively on iPhone or Android. Now, it's going to allow us to create forms and applications in just a few hours. And in my case, we're going to build it in about 30-40 minutes here. We're going to build a pretty intricate timekeeping application in a very fast manner. And it allows us to connect to hundreds and hundreds of data sources out on the web. So there's two types of apps we can build. There are the Canvas applications, which we're focusing on today. Now that's available in the Plan 1 plan. So for Microsoft, you go to the pricing page, you'll see there's actually there's 2 plans they advertise. There's actually a 3rd plan as well. There's Plan 1, which is at the list price is $7 a user a month. It's also included in Power Apps for the Office as well. So if you have an Office 365 subscription, chances are, I'm not a licensing expert, but chances are, based on how you negotiated it, they've included Power Apps as part of that plan as well. So that's a special version of Power Apps called Power Apps for Office. It includes most of what we're going to be covering today. Actually, include everything we're covering today. There's a few areas around if you use like premium connectors. You have to have a premium connector might be like the Salesforce, or it might be somewhere else that's a premium connector. That requires the Plan 1 subscription. Office also is something called the CDS. CDS is the Common Data Services Platform, and that's just basically say I don't want to have to build a stinking customer table again. Let me just go ahead and point to the one that Microsoft's already built for me. I don't want to have to go and license Power Apps and then also license a database as well. It basically spins up an Azure database for you. Right now it's Azure at least, and you can basically point to entities already in that database and share across multiple applications. It also works inside the Dynamics environment by doing that as well. So that is Plan 1. Plan 2 is essentially a mini version of Dynamics. So it helps you create these things called model-driven applications, which are gorgeous applications. They're a little prettier than Canvas, a lot easier to build, but it costs you money to do that. Now, if you have Dynamics today, some of the Dynamics plans include the Plan 2 is with that as well. So the biggest differentiating factor here between Plan 1 and Plan 2 is the model-driven applications. This is where you have things like processes and workflows that are all kind of built into the application. So what we're showing you today, though, is part of Plan 1 or Power Apps for the Office today. Okay, we mentioned there's a WYSIWYG editor. This is actually the editor you'll be using. It is a web-based editor, so there's no need to download any kind of tools. They update this editor quite frequently and has things like barcode scanners in it and photos inside of it, all sorts of really beautiful things. If you know Excel very well, you're going to learn this editor very, very easily also. It's all drag and drop. There are some weirdness to it. It takes a little bit of learning curve. Once you get past it, it is very, very easy to learn this application. Okay. Now we can mash data just like in Power BI. This actually has more data you can get. So Power BI has 100 or so connections. Power Apps and Flow, they share the same library of connections. So Power Apps and Flow are all combined. There's over 250 connectors right now for those. Some of them are actually data connectors, and some of them are things like I want to trigger an action to happen. Those are basically calling a method on a website. Like for example, cognitive services. You want to go and say do facial recognition inside that. All that ability is baked into this, and they're adding more connectivity all the time. Okay, I mentioned before, after you build an application, it works on every device, whether it be a tablet, a PC, or a phone. You can find that works across even Android or iOS, very seamless. What's going to happen there is you'll download the Power Apps app in the App Store for Android or iOS or Windows. And once you download that app, you'll be able to find basically an internal company store. So you'll sign in with your Office 365 credentials. It's going to pull up a list of apps that you have rights to. So that way you're not having to submit these to the App Store. It's an app store inside of an app store, basically is how it works. Okay, now the Flows job here is going to be the workflow side. Now you can have it basically watch out for certain kind of tables. You can also create workflows and triggers to say, hey, when this happens over here, do this. This can be called from within an application also from Power Apps as well. So inside of Power Apps, when you click on a button, you can say, trigger this workflow inside of Microsoft Flow. Now there's some few key areas of why you would use Flow inside of Power Apps. One is to run store procedures. Power Apps at this time, they're looking at adding it, but at this time does not support store procedures. So Flow is how you'll basically orchestrate those stored procedures. It also gives you the ability to go into have Power Query fire off and transform data and all those kind of things. We're going to use it today, though, for approvals. So I'm going to submit a time card, and Microsoft Flow is going to put it into a queue waiting for an approval process to happen. This approval process can happen on a phone, on an email, or inside of flow.microsoft.com also. So these are amazing options you have to kind of kick off these flows. So how do you know this is a good fit for you? Well, keep in mind, this is for internal applications only, and the internal applications, so there's not an ability inside of Power Apps to basically compile an application and send it out to the world. This is for internal use. So it does work if you're an ISV, for example, if you're building an application for other customers that they're going to host it inside their Power Apps environment. But it is for internal applications. It's great use case if you want to reduce manual workflows. So, for example, I was working with the Sheriff's Department, and the Sheriff's Department would have a QA looking at a case. A quality assurance person says, "Hey, officer, you have this information that we're missing in this case." So they would basically send an email out to the officer and have them do it. Well, the workflow was broken because they never actually follow up behind that to check to make sure that work got done. So replacing manual workflows like that or email workflows are a perfect use case for Microsoft Flow. If you want to digitally transform those PDFs into a perfect form inside of Power Apps, by doing that, it makes it available to things like a phone application, a tablet, or also a PC. Also, if you want to integrate, create new mobile apps, that's a good use case also. So out of curiosity, just one last poll question for today. Want to find out what kind of use cases you think that might make sense to you in your environment. So we're just trying to figure out like what makes sense for most companies out there. So we're finding most companies are just have mountains of paperwork, and their idea of going digital was to create these PDFs. And these PDFs are emailed. And one extreme use case, the PDF is printed, they fill it in, and then they scan it back in to keep it digital. So there's some crazy cases out there we find, and it looks like most of you guys, okay, looks like, let me go ahead and share this out real quick. Most of you guys are looking at replacing paperwork. That's kind of the use cases we're seeing, and about 30% of you guys are building net new applications. So in our case, we have this thing called our CMS, which is a terrible name, but it's our internal Pragmatic Works back office environment. And we built this Frankenstein code over years and years and years of work to build this. So we replaced most of that code, about 40%, 50% of that code, after years of building it and having support problems and having a very fragile code. Don't look at it, don't sneeze at it. We replaced that in about 2 days of Power Apps work. You'll find there's some really neat things you can do in Power Apps, and it makes it much, much easier to support also. So let's get to our demo today. So our demo today is to build a time card system. So our time card system we're going to build is we're going to be able to build by project. And we want the project manager for this project to get alerted and be able to approve that time card. So our ingredients we're going to use is Power Apps for the actual application and Microsoft Flow for the approvals and the workflow system for that time card. If you're a contractor, you may be familiar with having to wait for clients to approve these time cards. By building it this way, it can nudge the client automatically, like, hey, you haven't approved yet, why aren't you doing this yet? You can also say, hey, once they approve, it writes the record over into our billing system. So all of that can be done inside of Flow also. So let me jump out real quick, and we're going to spend most of our time after this building out applications and flows. So let's start with our application. So what I've done so far is I've gone to powerapps.com and I've signed into my environment, and I'm going to create a brand new application from scratch. So let's go ahead and do that. We can also create an application from data as well and really short fuse this data. You'll also notice here this little data tab right here. This is where the common data services comes in, where we can build entities from that database I was mentioning before, where Microsoft's already built entities for things like products and for customers and leads. Why go in and build that again and again? Just tie into their stuff and you can extend what they've already built for you. By doing that, it also integrates very neatly with things like Power BI. But we're going to build an application from scratch here, and this application is going to point to this table that we're seeing right here. This is my time card table. My time card table is pretty simple. We just have an identity column and time card ID. We're building to a project. How many hours are we billing? What date? What user is doing that? And what the status of that time card approval is. So very, very simple kind of table schema here. I have a few stored procedures we're going to use to support that also. So let's just call this time card webinar. Sorry about that. And I'll create that app. So what's happening now is it's going to go ahead and open up the designer environment. And this designer environment is going to help us navigate the rest of the building of the app. Now, this could be a phone version, or it could be a tablet version. It's going to work either way well on both those devices, but it can be sized appropriately for those. They're making it much, future releases making it much more responsive, but right now it just skinnies down or shrinks up based on that. So as we open this up, you'll find, there we go. It's running much faster, but we're going to see the environment today is going to be a little bit sluggish because the webinar is running and I'm broadcasting out to a few hundred people, so it gets a little sluggish because of that. So we're on a brand new screen. I'm not going to worry about naming conventions today, but we should have some kind of naming conventions. For example, if I were to go up here and say connect me to a gallery, for example, we should ideally give this a better name because we're going to be calling this gallery, which displays data, over and over and over again. So I like to go ahead and have like a 3-digit qualifier like gallery and then call it projects. So that way we have a noun and a verb. Or I don't want to say like browse projects or get or delete this or something like that. So oops, I didn't mean to do that. You gotta undo that. Thank God undo works, huh? So what I'm going to do, this gallery is going to list a list of projects that you can build time to. Now, I don't really like it the way it is right now. We don't need the pictures for those. And you'll also know it's pointing to a data source. Well, I don't have any data sources right now in this application. So let's go ahead and add a data source. So I selected my gallery, and on the right, my properties page, I'm going to say, let's go ahead and add a new data source where it says select a data source. Now, I've already got the connection created on a different application, so I'm going to piggyback that application. So you see we're pointing to this time card database here, and in that time card sample database, not very interesting, I'm going to point to time cards, and I'm going to point to projects. So really simple. I'll just check all the items right here. You'll also notice that views are allowed as well. So if you have some complex joins you want to do, usually views make the most sense for those complex joins. So I'll hit connect, and there we go. My 2 tables have been added. And for this case, I don't want to point to time cards. I want to point instead to my projects. So we'll get us to projects now. And also, I don't want it to have the picture and the who's responsible for this project and all that. I just care about maybe a list of projects. I'm going to select just title in this case. There we go. Now, to make this feel more like an application, sometimes with this kind of layout here, you want to use colors to kind of make it feel more like an application. So I'm going to change this color to really a really dark, maybe a dark blue of some sort. Let's see how that looks. It's pretty darn good. And our font inside this, let's make that a nice white font so it kind of sticks out a little more. Now we're talking. And there's a whole bunch of items inside this, like the next arrow. I need to make sure that looks like a white font also. And I can keep on going, but you get the idea. You can, of course, skinny this up however you wish. Okay, so this is a really simple kind of starting point. And you see, we basically built out this little repeater here in just a few seconds. We're now listing a list of projects. So there's lots of little gravy you can put on top of this if you want. If you want to make it look a little more poppy, no pun intended, you can go to transition and say, let's make it pop. So now there's 2 ways I can kind of interact with this application. One is to hit the play button up top. This kind of opens up in preview mode, and you see it kind of pops as I hover over it. That's one way. The other way is to hold the Alt key down, and while you're holding that down, do the action that you want. So it kind of gives you 2 ways of interacting with that. So when I select, for example, I don't know, hold down the Alt key and select Brian Redneck Project. I want this to be able to say what gallery do you want. I want to show a gallery on the right that shows you all the time cards that have already been built that project and what the status of those are. So if I go over to gallery again, let me add 1 more gallery. There we go. And this time, I'll go ahead and move it down here. I'm going to point this time to the time cards. Okay, now it's going to guess how I want that laid out. You see right here, it's saying I point a time card on the right, and it's showing the fields that I have right here. Well, I want the title of that to be maybe the user, the time card user, and I want maybe let's keep this a little bit simpler here. Let's go ahead and put the image. Okay, let's put the user here. Let's put the report date. So there we go. So now we're seeing a list of time cards that are not necessarily billed to that project yet. This is just all time cards right now. And you're seeing email addresses. Well, that's not going to work either. I want to see the names of the users, not their email addresses. And I'd love to be able to see their picture here as well. So those kind of requirements are really common requirements that we wanted to go do to kind of clean this up a little bit. So let's start with the picture first. How can we do that? Well, to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to View and our data sources again. You'll see the data source I've already created. There we go. I'm going to add a new data source and point over to my Office 365 library. So once I've done that, this gives me access to the Active Directory. So in my case, for this picture right here, you see it's pointing to a sample picture. I want to point to the picture that is from that user. So D9 at Pragmatic Works, what is your picture look like? So what I can do is I type in Office 365. Now that I've done that, and you see the IntelliSense picks up, and it's telling me how to code this. Up top here, you're seeing it wants a user ID. Well, I want to basically point to, I can type in D9 at Pragmatic Works, and it will go ahead and show me his picture. Now in my case though, to basically pass in that information, I can type in this item, which is the row I'm currently looking at, and navigate down to the actual column that has his email address in it. And when I close that parenthesis there, it's going to show me the picture for all these guys here. Now, so that kind of helps us figure out, and we can find this code out. If you hover over each of these items, it will say, all right, this is the user right here. Like for example, this guy here, if I don't want to actually have his email address, what I can do is I can wrap in Office 365, and this time let's go and let's point to, let's get their profile information this time. But this is where you can get who's the manager for this person and all sorts of really groovy information. I'm going to point to, again, this user, and I'm going to do dot. And now I get a list of what city is he in, what company does he work for, what is his given name. I want his display name. So now we're going to see, it's going to point to Office 365, and in a second, oh, this user, and I have an open parenthesis. Looks like it's not happy. Okay, it's expecting it got received one variable. Oh, I think I know. No, this card user display name. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and bypass that right now, but I'm not sure why it's complaining right now. This is always what happens on live demos, though, right? It is something with it's receiving a parameter it does not like. So let's just go back to this item dot email address. That's fine. I don't want to debug this live right now and have you guys. It did have the IntelliSense in there, so it is case sensitive, and that's why I have the capital I there because it's goofy that way. When I first created this table, it was case sensitive for that, so it is case sensitive here also. It's a parameter I'm missing, and unfortunately I already know the answer, but I don't want to go back and debug now. All right, so we also want down here, just go ahead and append in how many hours they build. So to do that, just like in Power BI, we'll put an ampersand here, and we'll say hours, and then do ampersand again. This item dot, and we want to get the number of hours they build. So now we can see, all right, on this day, they build 3 hours to Brian's Redneck Projects. So easy peasy to kind of figure out there, and I'll show you my code in an example here also. So now we need to go ahead and build a new time card to this as well. So we'll put our actual time card up top here, and there's some additional things we can do to kind of clean this up. I also want to maybe put like, hey, has this been approved yet? And maybe I'll just do that just for crib notes right now. We'll go ahead and put a space there, and then do this item dot status. There we go. So we can see if it's been approved or not. And Adam's time card here is pending client approval, and so on. Okay. So there's lots of neat things we can do around this. So first of all, I want to filter out, like if I'm looking at the Spanish translations, I have no projects built to that right now, so I want to filter that out. So to do that kind of filtering, it's actually pretty simple inside of this. I try to make it feel a little bit like Excel, but it's a little bit different in this case. So first of all, up in the upper right side, when I select this gallery, see it's gallery 2, I have it selected, and when I have it selected, it's showing items up top here. And I have a whole bunch of properties, but items is my default property. Look, it's looking at now. So for this, I'll type the filter command, and I want to do a comma, and see, tell me how to actually build it out right here. I want to, I'm filtering out this data source, and I want to say I only want project IDs for that data source that are equal to what was selected in that other gallery. So to do that, I'm going to point to the gallery. It's already selected, gallery projects right there. And I'll say, show me what was selected. So to do that, I'll just do dot selected dot project ID. So what project ID was selected? So anything on the right there is fair game to the left. So let me select Brian's projects here, and okay, there it goes. It's only showing the projects that are selected. So if I select Hindi projects, we get nothing right now. If I select the Redneck projects, we get the 3 projects that are actually been selected for that. So basically, again, what's happening here is I'm saying, hey, go to that time card table and look for that column called project ID, and basically do a join to what was selected on the left side. So you can always refer to any gallery, even from previous screens, to this screen. So we can have multi-screen applications where I say what was selected on that first screen in. So things like wizards and all that kind of make it nice and easy peasy to do. So nice what we can do here. We can also do things like, I don't want to show this gallery at first. If they haven't selected anything, I want to make sure that nothing's showing right now. I don't want to show all this stuff when they haven't set any gallery at all. So let me go ahead and start this with maybe, how about I put some a little media icon here, a little image here. And I'm going to have this wrap my whole thing here, much as I can of it at least. And let's point that into, how about I'll add an image and we'll point that to something, oh, do I have something interesting? Okay. Have a whole bunch of like clip art kind of stuff. All right, let's go with this guy right here. That's definitely clip arty right there. Okay, so I want to show this at first, and if they select something, then the galleries start lighting up and all that. So let's find out how we can go ahead and basically only show this image conditionally when I first come to the screen. So to do that, I'm going to select the app up top, and on the app side, we can go ahead and say, I'm going to create a variable. You must notice right now on the app, it says on start. So that on start, I'm going to go ahead and create a variable I'm going to use later. Now the set command is a global variable that can be used across any screen in our application. There's also an item called update context, which is available to only this screen particular. But in my case, I'm going to do a global variable just to keep it really simple right now. So I'll do a set. Now I'll call that var show time card. And I'll set that to be equal to false by default. If I don't want to show the time card till I select something. So on this image right here, I want to make sure that that image is only visible. So I'm going to go to my visible area right here. It's only going to be visible if that variable is set to true. So that variable right now, if I select it right now, well, we know it's false because I just set it to false, right? Now, if I want to say, do the opposite of that. So the time card is showing. If I'm showing, then hide the image. If it's not showing, show the image. So I'm going to say a little exclamation point. That basically says if it do the opposite of what the variable is set to. So the variable is set to false right now, and that makes it true. On that gallery you see back here, gallery 2, we'll go ahead and do the visible flag again. There we go, visible flag. And I'll do the same thing. Just type in the word var, it's going to find the variable, and there we go. So now you can see that that gallery has just disappeared. So it's not back there at all anymore. So this is a way of kind of showing and hiding things. We could write an if-then statement inside this visible flag. We could also say, hey, do the opposite of what the other of this image is. But it's just, there's a whole bunch of ways. Nice thing about app building is there's about 1 million ways of doing anything, and there's more elegant ways of doing something I'm showing you in a 30-minute presentation, mind you. So now, if you select this guy right here, any of these arrows that you're seeing right here, I want to set that variable to inverse it, set it true, basically. So what I can do is I'll go over to here, and I'm going to say, hey, when you selected something, so looking for on select, there it is. I'm then going to go ahead and say set that variable. There we go, set that variable, and it kind of it's telling me how to build it right here up top. See up right above it? It says set the variable, comma, whatever's your value there. So now it's made bold up top what it wants me to do. So let's go ahead and set that variable now to true. I want to show the time card. So now if I hold down the Alt key and select Brian's Redneck project, we'll see it basically inverses that, and then now it's only showing me the gallery of items. So really simple what we can do. Now if we want to roll that back to its default state, we could select the app again and say, hey, run that on start variable again, and it kind of runs back that default state again. Okay, so kind of cool. Our next stage in our application is we want to actually build a mechanism for somebody to go ahead and add a new time card. And this is where getting fun starts. So let's go ahead and add a new form up top. So I'm going to add a new edit form. There we go. You'll see that form is right up top here. And again, we want this to feel more like an application. So first of all, we're going to wire this to our data source, which is our time card we're going to be adding. We'll hit Edit Fields. And Edit Fields is where we go through and we point to all those stinking fields we want to add. So I want to go ahead and build the number of hours we're going to build, the project you're building to, the report date, the status. We want the user that's doing the time card, and that'll be good enough for time being. You can then reorder the fields however you want. You can say, oh, this is not a number, this is a date. You can do all sorts of crazy. This interface has gotten a lot better. The last even 2 months, it's gotten a lot better. So most of these, though, I don't want my user to ever touch. For example, the date. I want to be very, very simple. I want them to go ahead and default to a new date. So to do that, you see what it says under Advanced here? It has a little lock right now. Because I chose a wizard to do this, I cannot set the value right inside this. So I need to unlock this field value. They're trying to protect me from myself here, basically. And I'm going to set a default date of now. Now we can do this a few ways. We can do it up top here, or we can do it on the side that you're seeing right here. I'm going to go ahead and just type it up top because I can type faster that way. So now it's defaulting to today's date. Now we could technically hide that. It's all based on requirements, right? Could somebody enter a time card for 2 weeks ago? It's up to you. The time card user, let's go ahead and again unlock that property. It lights up at top here. That time card user is going to be the user that's currently signed in. So there's a few ways I can do that. The easiest way is type user : open close parenthesis and do email. That code right there is going to put the email address for the user that's signed in. We could base it on their photo, on whatever, all sorts of stuff we can do. Now that I've done that, though, let's go ahead and hide that because I don't want the user to be able to enter a time card for somebody else. So I'm going to go and set my visible flag to off in this case. The status right there, let's go ahead and make the status. Again, I'm going to unlock the field. You see a lot of repeat things I'm doing here. I'll make the status is going to be pending. A great question from Scott Turner here. Can Power Apps be embedded into SharePoint? It can absolutely be embedded into SharePoint. So in your SharePoint list, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can, of course, open up the app inside of SharePoint. You can also, though, have it where it will integrate with, I'm going to hide this. You can also have it where it takes over a form inside of SharePoint. So when you're adding a new item to a list, for example, this can be your app that opens up, and you get a lot better, cleaner environment from that. So it's a whole bunch of options you have here. Let's go ahead and hide this one as well. All right. And our last one is a project ID. I need to refer to the project ID that's selected on the left here. So let's unlock that bad boy again. And for the project, we've already seen this code once. It's gallery, whatever gallery I want to pull from. And I'm doing dot selected dot, I want the project ID. There we go. So that project ID is now in there. And I don't want them to build anything else. So we go ahead and select this guy again and hide this value again. Oh, there's my visible. So now my form has gotten to be very, very simple. There's a few more things we want to do inside this form to keep it a little cleaner, make it look prettier. First of all, I'm going to give a nicer color here. Let's go with maybe a light blue. Yeah, it looks not bad. And we also want to go through and clean up make sure that it opens up not in edit mode, but in new record mode. So the default mode is going to be new now. So when I first open this up, it's going to be white clean and ready for a new value, a new time card to go into it. The other thing I want is I want to go ahead and add a save button. So let's go ahead and add a new button up here. Let's add that some random spot here. Let's just call that save time card. Okay, easy enough. Now, when somebody clicks on that, there's really a few things that needs to be done. I want to make sure that once they click on it, it saves the form. And of course, I need to clean this form up, as you can imagine, kind of clean up, tidy up the pieces. That's my OCD's kicking in now. I'm starting to get a little itchy right now. So let's make sure that, first of all, the data is submitted. So to do that, I pick my button and I say, let's go ahead and submit the form, and see it's kind of writing the code for me. What form do I want to submit? Well, I have not done naming convention, so unfortunately it's called Form 1, and you can see the name of that when I select this form, and you see it's called Form 1 right here. Here's a brilliant thing about Power Apps, by the way. If I were to go and actually do proper naming conventions and call this FRM add time card, hit enter, you'll see a little spinny box there. It's adding it here. It changed it here. And look at my code now. My code actually has fixed code now as well. So at any point you can refactor, and it refactors all of your code that's touching that as well, all at the same time. Okay, so we know that there's 3 states to our time cards: pending, approved, and rejected. So the way we're going to do that, so right now, as it stands right now, I can add time cards and new rows will go in. I'm not going to do that quite yet, but you'll notice that as I hit save, go into this, we can start adding new projects, a new time right here, hit save, and then my time card will go right down here. But look what happened as soon as I hit that save button. My time card kind of went away. So I need to go through and make sure it resets the value back. So I need to make sure that is set to new. So basically what's happening is it's sending it and it's not resetting it back to its default value. So to do that, there's a number of ways we can do that. Of course, again, a number of ways on everything. If this form successfully submitted, I want to go through, so I'm going to go to my form, which I have selected, and I'm going to say, hey, if you actually successfully wrote that record to the database, let's go ahead and reset you back to your previous state. So I'm going to reset that form back to the previous state. So now, if I hit play and I add 99 hours to that project, hit save, there we go. It reset the form back to its clean state now at this point. So again, a lot of different ways we can do that. That's just one of the ways we can do it. Notice both of these are also pending. So it will be nice to have things like a little lock that says, hey, it's pending. So let's do a quick icon check here, and let's put maybe a little some kind of thing that represents pending here. So let's go pending approval. So maybe it's going to be something like I don't know. Let's just say, here, I'll put a calendar in, a lock. There we go. I'll put a lock in there. Now, first of all, you notice I made an amateur mistake here. I need to be inside the gallery item. So I hit the little pencil right here. You may not be able to see that pencil, but I'm hitting the pencil. Now I'm looking at the item. Now I can add the icon to actually make that work. So that's just one of the gotchas. You have to make sure you're in there, and you know you've done it right when I select lock. And you'll see 2 locks here. So I kind of move those around. You'll see that they independently move now. Okay, so I want to show that lock. So I'm going to go to my visible flag here. If that status is set to pending, then I want to show a lock. So I'm going to go up here under visible flag, and I'll say something like this item.status is equal to pending. Now it's only going to show if it's pending. But over my redneck ones that you see here, only one has a lock. Okay? And we can do the same thing for approved and rejected and all those kind of things also to make it a really clean environment. Now the fun part starts though. So I've submitted the time card, and now, first of all, I need to save this bad boy, don't I? Before my web meeting crashes here. So I'm gonna go ahead and save it. I'll call it time card webinar. When I hit save, the next step after I do save is to publish it and share it with others. There's version control built into this, but the minute I hit share this application with others, they're now able to see this, and I can start working on version 2 of the app that they can't even see yet. So it has that version control and distribution of the app already integrated. So in my case, though, I'm ready to open up a workflow that's going to control the approval of these time cards. So I'm going to go over to flow.microsoft.com, and this is included in your Power Apps plan. So you get tens of thousands of calls at an individual level for each user that has a Power Apps plan. So let's do a new flow. Now a flow is basically, think of it almost like if you're a data guy, think of it like a SIS package. It's a workflow. If you're not a data guy, think of it as a workflow. So let's go ahead and do a new one of these workflows. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it, hey, just watch a table in this case. Now, these can be called from Power Apps. We're going to do that a little bit later if we have time. But in this case, I'm going to create a blank workflow, and all it's going to do is watch a table for new records to be added. A few gotchas that I'll talk about as I search for SQL Server here. One of the gotchas is that column that does not support primary keys that have GUIDs in it, for example. It's got to have a primary key. It's a number. It can kind of say, the last time I saw that, it was 50. Now it's 51. Something's been changed there. So I'm going to go ahead and say when an item is created, and which table, I want to point to my time card table. I already have the database selected earlier. And when a new time card is created, what do I want to do? Well, a few things I want to do. I need to first of all find out who the project manager is. So I'm going to do a get row. So I'm going to go back to my SQL Server again. So I'm saying, what action do I want to do? This is my triggering event, and this is the action that's going to happen when that triggering event happens. I want to get a row, and the row I want to get is from a different table, the project table. And that project table, I want to make sure that I want to pass in my ID, something on the right here, you may see. There we go. I want it to show me all the columns. And what is my ID here? Well, my ID is the time card ID. Oh, sorry, is my time card ID. So it's going to go ahead. Oh, actually, I'm wrong. Excuse me. It's not time card ID. It's a project ID. Okay. So the project ID is coming from the previous record. So up here, it said when an item is created, boom, it captures that row that was created. And it's going to send that row to the next step. That next step says, okay, I see there's a project ID here. What do you want from this table? So I'm going to get the project for that project ID now. So again, it's like almost like SIS. It's transforming the data every step along the way. So yes, the SQL, a good question here from Andy here. The SQL Server I'm connected to is a cloud database, but does support on-premises database as well, on-prem databases as well. So it can be enterprise managed as well. So from a governance side, there are loads of things you can say that this app is touching this critical data, and because of that, it has to be secured this way. So they do have enterprise capabilities in this also that I'm not really showing today, but we'll show some follow-up webinars on those as well. Okay, so my next step in the game here is I want to wait for an approval. So let's do an approval now. This is pretty awesome. So I'm going to do approval, and there's a new version of approvals. So let's go ahead and go to approvals. And I want to go to these version 2 versions. It's going to start up an approval. It's going to wait for something to happen. So it's basically going to start this workflow. It's going to perpetually wait. I can put some time bounds into it, but it's going to wait for either everyone to approve or just the PM to approve. I just gave it the project manager to approve in my case. So whoever approves first wins the battle. I'm going to put something like time card entered. I might have misspelled that for, and I'll say how many hours. Well, I'm getting the number of hours here. Okay, we got to slide to the right here. I want to get that from my first step there, the row that got submitted. So I'm going to go hit show more. And there's a number of hours right there up top. And I'll say 4, and let's get the project name up here. That's for my get row one here in this case. So who is this going to be sent to? Well, I'm going to send this to whoever the owner of this project is. So let's go over to the earlier area. So get row has a project manager. There's my project manager right there, and there's his email address. So we can keep on going, make this more interesting, but we'll stop here. Now the next stage is I want to basically wait for that approval, and if that approval happens, let's go ahead and put a condition here. So I'll put a condition. There we go. Basically an if-then statement. If they approve it, so if it's coming from the approval one, so you start and wait for approval, and I didn't change any names here. So the outcome, if the outcome of the approval is equal to approve, there we go, then go the left way. If it's not, go the right way. So I'm going to go ahead and start an action here. And the action I want to do is basically to change the status of that time card to true. Now, there's a lot of ways I can do this. I can do a store procedure. I'm going to keep it very, very simple right now and just do an update statement right now because I haven't built the store procedure for this. So let's do an update statement, and I'm going to point to, okay, Let's go ahead and point. Actually, I do have a store procedure. So I'll keep it simple here. Let's go ahead and update the table. I'm going to update the time card table, which is at the bottom here. Can't quite see it. Oh, the interface gets a little bit funky sometimes. There, that's time card table. What is your primary key? Well, I already had that primary key from the previous step. It's my project ID from that get row step. Not project ID, time card ID, excuse me. So it should be down here. So look for my time card ID. There it is. And what do you want to set the values of these to? Well, I want to set the project ID to be equal to project ID. There we go. I want to set the number of hours to be number of hours. Again, it's to be much, much faster as a stored procedure, but faster from a development perspective, but I'm just being a little bit lazy right now because I'm running out of time. My time card user is so-and-so, and then my status this time is going to be approve. Now, I would do the same thing on the left side, but in an effort to save time, let's keep this simple. And I'll just, well, I can't clone, unfortunately, so I'll just save it right now, and we'll either be approved or not. So we'll keep it really simple right now. But I would basically clone this step on the right and put rejected on that side. Okay, so now that that's done, let's give us a better name, and I'll call this just time card approval. Let's then go ahead and submit a time card. Now you'll notice, just like Zapier and all those kind of workflow apps, this now is running and waiting for people to interact with it. Okay, so if I go over to my time card app right here, and I run this, and I go ahead and submit some time to my Redneck project right here. Let's do 99 hours here, and I hit save time card. It might take about a minute. So what's happening is it's pulling the table every so often, finding out, hey, somebody's submitted some time, is waiting for a row to get added. And in a moment, what's going to happen, because I have the Flow app installed, you may not be able to see on my webcam right now, we're going to see something, an alert pop up that says time card waiting for approval. And I can, right from my app, go ahead and say approve or not approve right there. I'll also, there it goes, Flow approve. I don't want to actually show you guys, but I'll actually tap it right here. I got an email in the background. I got a Flow approval right here. And I also, over in this window right here, if I go to approvals, we'll see there's approval waiting here as well. So we'll have, it's ringing me up all over the place right now, waiting for an approval. So I could hit approve here. I can hit approve in the app. I'm just going to be late. I can hit approve in the email even. I'm going to go ahead and approve it. I can leave comments, and you have access to all of this. I can actually reassign this to somebody else. But when I hit confirm, it's going to run the rest of the workflow right now, and it logs the fact that I approve this now. So from a governance side, you have a log tracked effect of who did what. So if I were to refresh this right now, we will see that I went to approve. Oh, yeah, it's got Devin's picture there, but I have approved right now. So kind of handy. Now if I had a checkbox now, we'd see a checkbox, but now you see I went from a pending to approved. So lots of good stuff we can do there. Now let me show you one more thing about how we can trigger this app to get kicked off on our side as well. So to do that, I want to be able to select this row and say, oh, you did pick 99 hours. What were you thinking here? So I want to be able to pick this called a chevron. Pick the chevron right here and have the time above it be reflective of that. So I'm going to pick that chevron. And above this, what I need to happen is when something is selected there, when that little item is selected, go ahead and pick that item here. I want to change my form mode up top to edit versus insert. So I'm going to go ahead and put a semicolon right after that. And as you do that, it's saying run this, then do this, then do this. So I'm going to say edit form. There we go. Edit form and point to which form I want to do. There's my form name right there. Oh, nope. Edit form and then FRM. There's my form name right there. So when I select that chevron again, it's now in edit mode versus insert mode. But now it doesn't know which record to show. So in the form, I'm going to go to my items area. Now the items area in the form is only used when it's in edit mode. So it's going to ignore this code inside of new mode. So I'll just go ahead and say gallery 2, which I have a terrible name in this case, gallery 2 not selected. So whatever item you selected, go ahead and show that value right there. Now you remember I set the top value of Devin's hours. We're seeing the number 3 right now, And if I were to go and update the value to 5 now, or 55, and hit save, we'll see that 3 becomes 55. It also goes back to pending state because somebody has just monkeyed with my data. And it knows that I'm the person that did it, so it changed it to me now versus Devin. Now, that's probably not the requirements you have, but you get the idea. Now, what I might want to do then is kick off a flow to say, hey, do you want to approve this time as well? And get it out of this lock state and into approve state. So to do that really simply, we can go and when I select this item right here, let me go ahead and copy that code because I'm going to need it again. You'll see up top, one of the things we can do is under actions and flows. So in this case, I've already got this flow created, which is something very similar. It's going to basically run the same code you saw before, but this time it's going to be interactive. So I'm going to select that flow. You'll see it's going to overwrite my code here. That's why I selected it out. There we go. So it's going to run that flow, and it wants to know, well, what do you want to pass to? What time card ID am I updating here? So I want to go ahead and say gallery 2 dot selected dot time card ID. So pass the time card ID that we're actually doing the update on. So now with that selected, I also want to go ahead, after that's selected, go ahead and submit the form again. All right, so this is how it's going to look now. If I go ahead and kick this guy off, I'm going to go ahead and change Devin's hours back to 99 hours, hit save. A flow is running, the time was submitted, and now we're seeing 99 hours. So back over here in flow now, if I go back to my flows, I just got an alert from my phone saying there is a new time card submitted. There we go. You see the new time card was submitted. We'll also see it in approvals here as well. But let me just show you really quickly what actually ran. All right, so over here, this flow is going to look very, very similar. You see it's running right now. It's running because it's waiting for somebody to interact with it. It's waiting for somebody to say, hey, yeah, I approve this. So if I go inside that flow, let me actually hit the edit mode. Okay. Okay, this is actually looking at it after rejection. Here we go. It looks very similar. Power Apps is now kicking this off. And starting from approval, exact same logic. This time I'm firing off a store procedure. So this would have worked also. I'm saying pass the time card ID, and I'm approving that time card ID. So really simple code, a lot easier than last time actually. And if I go to approvals, let's go ahead and actually approve this bad boy, eh? So let's go ahead and there we go. Oh, I may have actually interacted with it over here by accident. Let me actually open up the app here. I think I did actually interact with it on my side. Now, likewise, an email is being sent to me as well, and I did approve it by accident, but you get the idea. I'm actually going to reject that one. It's because I had it locked over here. That's why you didn't see it in the web experience. So I went ahead and rejected it. Now, by doing that now, the flow has now completed, hopefully. So I go to my flows, look at this guy right here. We'll see that the one that was initialized before should no longer be in a running state, but now is complete. Now over in Power Apps land, we should now see, if I go back to Brian's Redneck project, that pending one that you saw back here, around 9 hours, has now been rejected. So this is how we can basically replace a really complex paperwork system in just a few minutes here with a really easy process. So there's lots more we can do with this. We can add more icons in here and make it look a lot prettier, but you get the idea, right? It's a really easy, streamlined process using Flow, and it's a really cheap process also. So because everything I've done here is included in my Office subscription in my case. All right, so let's go back to our slide deck. If you have any questions, by the way, go and queue those up if you don't mind. So by the way, this is one of the things that we do here at Pragmatic Works. We build apps like these for customers all around the world. And so, you know, if you're curious about how much does a Power Apps developer make, went out to the survey, went out to ZipRecruiter the other day. The average salary on ZipRecruiter right now is $108,000. Now it ranges dramatically, right? So you got $35,000 on the low end, up to $161,000, and it could be because they're all, you know, interacting with a whole bunch of range. They might have other skills also in that mix. So Power Apps developers have a great future if you're working inside of Power Apps. Now, as more people come and learn the skill, the price might come down a little bit, of course, but it's a really cool skill and national average to have. So one of the things we do here at Pragmatic Works is we actually build those apps for customers. They can have a month, if you want to have like a month a week, a week a month, excuse me, we basically bill for a shared development. So you can say, all right, let me queue up all those paperwork items I want to replace, and 32 hours of time, I'm going to get it through as many apps as I can in 32 hours, and you'll have 8 hours of oh crap time. You know, that the app's having issues, it's having trouble synchronizing with on-premises, and all those kind of things. So this is one of the things we can do for you also. It's part of our shared development platform that we have for customers, where we basically build apps for you. So we you basically build a backlog, and then we kind of support you as time goes on. So we have a few questions that have been queuing up over the past bit here. One of the questions is about the enterprise readiness piece of it, and how do I deploy apps? Well, once I save this app, one thing you'll notice is my phone is looking at the old version of the app. But until I hit the word publish here, everyone's looking at version 1, and when I hit publish, they're now up to date on version 2. And this is the way I can kind of interact with it and have different environments. Like right now, I'm looking at my dev environment here. But I could publish it from my dev environment to a production environment. There's all sorts of ways you can do on this. Is it better to use a SharePoint list as a data source versus a SQL server? So that's a great question from Andy. SharePoint lists give you a lot of flexibility as far as attachment of files, and they give you also a lot of flexibility as far as lookups and all that. A lot of things that come over natively with that. The reason why I chose a SQL Server table is the complete flexibility it gives me. SharePoint has some funkiness to it, especially on date handling and those kind of things. And if we do it this way, that funkiness goes away. But the cool things don't come over with it. The compromise could be, though, Andy, for you is the CDS, the Common Data Services. It's essentially using a lot of the SharePoint technology inside of a database. So if you want to enable things like attachments and version control and auditing and all the governance part, you just check a box and it does all that work for you. Like, for example, if I go over to Power Apps right now here and I say data here, and I look at my entities, you'll see a list of all the entities I have, and I can go through and create new entities. And this is essentially an Azure database. It's available in a whole bunch of different places like Power BI. So my account entity, for example, I can go ahead and extend that and add things that are custom to me. It has things like security built into it, row level, all sorts of cool stuff is built into that you don't have inside a SharePoint or in a database. Is there a way to make approval time out of a certain period of time? Yes. So the question is from Lucas here. Is there a way to say, hey, 2 months has gone by, this time card is not going to get approved? You can absolutely have a time box on that. You can have some kind of washer that says, hey, if this happens, send out a final notice. If this happens again, send out a cancellation of that. So that can absolutely be done as well. So question here on that, I think it's on the CDS here. Will your data source auto update? I assume that means new employees added. Yes, so this actually can build integrations for that as well, but on the app itself, you'll find I have a webinar series. If you go to youtube.com/Pragmatic Works, you can find our webinar series, and you'll find in that webinar series whole how to learn Power Apps piece. And one of my videos is how do we refresh this automatically. It's going to refresh when you come to the screen again, or as I kind of click around, it will refresh every time I come back here again. However, this left list, I could put some code to refresh it on a timer, or I could put say, hey, every time you come to the app, do it that way. It can absolutely be done though. Now these guys right here, these users right here, these are automatically out of my Office 365 catalog. So those will all automatically be refreshed as users are added as well. So hopefully that answers your question, Jessica. We have a question here from Gang here, Chen, about the applications. Yes, the applications here are for internal usage only. So I cannot build this application and post it on a website for somebody else to use outside of my domain. Now what I can do though, is if I'm a software company and I want you to have the ability to I built this perfect solution for time cards, and this is a time card system that I want to go ahead and send to you as an ISV, as me as ISV in this case. I can package this up for you and send it over to you, and you can run it, and it's completely a white box managed solutions. That's under solutions right here. I can basically package stuff up, I can export it, and then everything they need is inside that box. So when they install it, you can make it where they can see the code, they can't see the code, it's all up to you there. I showed you version control in Power Apps. Is there a way to do version control inside of Flow? Yes, there is actually. You can do as well. A great question here from Lester about geocoding. Yes, you can have, for geocoding, really simple. This is one of my favorite features here. You have the ability right inside here. I'll just throw a quick text box here, Lester, so you can see. Oops, I meant to do text box. I'll throw a label out here, and I put it in a gallery instead by accident, but you get the idea. So you'll see there's actually location code built into this. So if I do like location dot, it gives you access to the latitude, longitude, and all those kind of things that the phone has support for. Now the customer has to get permissions to use that, just like you do on your iPhone or Android. But by doing this, you can have full lat long, and you have offline capabilities also. So if you are at a customer, for example, Clean Water International, doing this great project for delivering water filters to people, they are off GPS for a good portion of the time, off of the grid for a good portion of the time. So you can go ahead and save time cards out there offline, and then when you're online again, it will basically batch that up. So lots of good stuff we can do there. Oh, wow, I am out of time. So again, if you're interested in us building applications for you, we most certainly do that. Feel free to email me at my email address that I had up here earlier. It's bknight@Pragmatic Works if you'd like to reach out to us about that. Again, it's a really cost-effective way to kind of get into the world of Power Apps. To say, here's my backlog, go build it. And we can get a lot done in about 32 hours. Well, thank you guys for coming today. I have a lot of questions also still out there. This will be available on YouTube in a few days. My email address is on the screen right now. If you have any questions, additional questions about Power Apps as well, please feel free to reach out to me. It may take me a day to get back to you, but I will get back to you though. And thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great day. Bye.